Okay, so let us move to the next country that we are studying is the Netherlands. And to explain us the case of Netherlands, we have with us Professor Casper von Ewijk. I hope I pronounced it correctly. Von Ewijk, more or less. So Professor von Ewijk is Emeritus Professor of Economics at the University of Amsterdam and the Tilburg University, and currently a Senior Research Fellow at NetSpar, the Network for Studies on Pensions, Aging, and Retirement. His research focused primarily on pensions, public finance, and the challenges of an aging population. He served as Deputy Director of the Netherlands Office for Economic Policy Analysis for 5 years and as Director of NetSpar for 7 years. He has been a member of several national advisory committees on pensions reform and continues to advise the Dutch government, social partners, and pension funds, contributing his expertise to academic and political debate on the future of pensions. So, Professor, thank you very much for joining us today. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to tell you a bit about the Dutch system. Actually, these are exciting times because we are in the middle of a transition, major reform of our second pillar. I will discuss in more detail later. But this reform has been prepared for some 15 years. And in 2019, policymakers and social partners agreed to start the reform, and we are now in the middle of it. So these are exciting times for Dutch pensions. But I will start with a brief overview of the pension system. That's on the next slide. Yes, I start with the good news. For a second year in a row, at least, we are on the top of the Mercer ranking list for pensions, together with Iceland and Denmark. And Dutch pensions are well funded. We have funding ratios of our second pillar of over 200% of GDP. So we have a solid pension capital built up. Actually, we have been lucky because in the Netherlands, the second pillar pension started already after World War II. So it's more or less mature now. And we have accumulated a lot of pension assets. That's a different position from a lot of other countries who have to start to build up the second pillar in often difficult times. Our replacement rates are also high. If you compare to the OECD, we have replacement rates of some 80% of previous wages, which is well above most other countries. Next slide. Yeah, this is an overview of our system. We have a classical three-pillar system. We have a flat basic pension for all citizens, aimed at poverty alleviation. On top of this, we have the second pillar of occupational pensions. Here, it is shown relative to income. You see that for the lower incomes, the basic state pension is the most important one. If income becomes higher, then occupational pensions becomes more important. And there is some cap in the tax system for deductibility of pension contributions in our second pillar, and that's also a cap for the occupational pensions. So you build up pensions up to an income of some 120,000 euro. On top of that, you have no higher pension contributions. We have a third pillar, but it's very small, basically because the first and second pillar are so good, but there are some private savings, but more important are savings through home equity. So 60% of the people own a home, and there is a mandatory, you have to bring down your home debt before your 60th, so people possess quite some home equity, and you can use this in part for your retirement income as well. Let's look at more detail in our three-pillar system on the next. Yes, so here you see for an average worker, the model worker, it's more or less half the state pension and half the occupational pension. So the state pension is some 20,000 euro each year. That is linked to minimum wages. And on top of that, people build up pension in the second pillar. So the basic pension is non-contributory, and the second pillar is. We have a system of decentralized labor agreements. So every company or sector has its own pension plans, and there's a large role of social partners. They organize it, they agree in labor agreements on the pensions in each sector. That means that we have some 200 different pension schemes in the Netherlands. So it's all supervised by the Dutch central bank, the Nederlands Bank, and it is managed by pension funds and insurance companies. And most of these pension schemes are run at the company level, but there are some very big pension funds, for instance, for the civil servants. The companies organize the pensions, the administration is done by the insurance companies, and the big pension funds do it themselves. And the third pillar is, as said, voluntary saving. On average, we aim at replacement rates of some 75–80%. Next. Each person can see its total pension. So we collect all the information of the first and second pillar pension. So if you also build up pensions, it's different pension schemes. It's all collected in my pension overview. And each citizen can see what its social expected retirement income is and how it changes over time. This is a very nice feature. Still, it is missing the third pillar pension, so that's an issue. Next, we have, because our occupational pensions are dependent on investment returns, it's not certain what the pension is you will get in the end. And uncertainty has increased over time. So we have also to communicate the risk in your pension, and that's done in a standard manner by showing the expected value of your retirement income, but also a low and a high scenario. So in good times you get more, in bad times you get less, and that should give an impression of the total variance in your income. Next. Looking in more detail, so far I focused on a stylized standard person, but actually there is a large diversity across households. If you look at pensions only, so the public and the occupational pensions, first and second pillar, you see that some do very well. There's a green bar on the left. They have replacement rates of over 80%. The modal worker has the mid group, the median, has about 70% replacement rate, but there's also people with lower pensions of about 50%, which is not that very high. It has been interesting in the exercise to look at total retirement income, because people also get retirement income from other sources, voluntary savings, but in particular home equity. And if you add up, for instance, the rental value of owned homes, you get much higher replacement rates. And here you see that the green bar is even over 100%. And that means that more than 25% of Dutch households has more income after retirement than before. So you get your pension, your house is well paid off, and you're doing very well. But also here there's a lot of diversity. People without their own home, so the renters, people without a good pension do less well. Interestingly, this also this is done for the self-employed, and here you see on average it is lower. Self-employed are not covered by our occupational pensions. They have to care for themselves. Some do very well, but also a lot of them fail to save for the pension. Here you see a larger variety and also on average lower retirement income. And also some 25% of the self-employed has replacement rates of 50% or less. So there is a problem. I will come back to this later in my presentation. Let's have a look more in detail on the first pillar, so the basic pension. On the next slide, there's the information. It's financed as usual on a pay-as-you-go basis. Everybody contributes 80% of its income to this pension, but that's not sufficient. So it has been decided some, I guess, 15 years ago already that this shouldn't increase anymore. Because the total pension load in the first pillar is increasing because of the aging of population. But this 18% has been fixed over time, and the residual is supplemented from tax revenue. And that part is growing and will further grow in the future. It is residence-based. So if you stay sufficient time in the Netherlands, and then you build up a full state pension, but it takes 50 years, and you should count back from your official retirement age. So today it's 67. So you should live from your 17th to your 67th in the Netherlands. Then you get a full state pension. And it is linked, as said already, to the minimum wage for a couple. And for a single, you get a bit less. You can take your state pension if you live abroad, then you keep it, and some 9% of the pensioners live abroad. Some in the neighbor countries, Belgium and Germany, but also a lot like to move to the better weather in Spain. So we have a lot of pensioners there as well. The problem with the state pension is with all migration, we have a quite substantial inflow of migrants, and they do not build up a full state pension. So I think this is an issue. It's not much debated, but there is about 20% of the people does not get a full state pension. The main problem is with the migrants. This is also the biggest group, so 19%, but also with increasing mobility over the world, working for some time in other countries, you also miss some state pension. In my view, it's a quite strict rule that you should live for 50 years in the Netherlands. I could imagine that it could be also a shorter period, but the share of people without a full state pension is increasing over time. And if you don't get a full state pension, there is a special arrangement for those people, and then actually you get income support at the social assistance level, but that's means tested. So some people, if you have other means, then you get very little. And 2.4% of the total pensions get this supplementary pension. Okay, next, the second pillar. That's the more interesting one at the moment in the Netherlands. The next slide, please. Yeah, it is organized at a decentralized level. It started in the 1950s, and these labor agreements could be on sectoral level or company level, and also there are some associations of professionals also having collective agreements, mostly professionals in the medical sphere, so the doctors, the dentists, the physiotherapists. And if you are covered by this labor agreement, then it is mandatory for employees and also for all companies in that specific sector. We have quite high contributions in the second pillar, 25% of income, but it's above a threshold of from 19,000 euro, which represents the share of the first pillar pension. So it's so you build up only in excess of your first pillar. There are some arrangements in most schemes for survivor pensions, and it's organized by pension funds or insurance companies. We have still 200 different pension schemes. It's expected that there will be further consolidations. Some 10 years ago, it were even 600, so it's coming down rapidly, and it's expected to go down further in the future. And the special system in the Netherlands, and that's where we care much about, and we are sometimes afraid of European rules, is that it is mandatory for all companies and professionals in the sector, and that's enforced by the government. So once there is a social labor agreement, then the government says, well, this is mandatory for all in that sector. What's not on this slide is that we have a flexible retirement scheme. So it's actuarially fair. Within a window of some 10 years, you can decide to retire earlier, and then you get a lower pension for the rest of your life, or you can postpone your retirement for some 5 years, and then you get a higher pension for the rest of your life. Now going to the problems. We come from a DB system. So in the old days, in the good old days, everybody got a pension promise in guaranteed income. It was a nominal guarantee, but it was indexed every year to inflation or in wage inflation. And it took a long time to convince everybody that this is no longer sustainable with the aging of population. So if you look at current ratios, we have an enormous pension wealth in the Netherlands. In the past, we were able to cover losses and in our pension wealth due to bad investment years by raising contribution rates. But around 2010, it was decided that contributions are already that high that we shouldn't any longer use pension contributions to cover losses in our pension system. And for the good reason that contributions today, the inflow is so low relative to the pension wealth that it's not longer sustainable. But it took a long time to convince everybody that this system was no longer sustainable. We are not unique. Most countries switches from DB to DC. What also stimulated this transition was the stricter accountancy rules. Also, companies do not want this to have a pension obligation on their balance sheet. Next. So, in more detail, we are coming from the DB system. We had a system where you get nominal pensions entitlements. And entitlement means that you get a lifelong pension from retirement age. And there was an accrual rate. So most people are still in the system. We are in the middle of the transition. Each year you build up an entitlement of some 1.9% of your wage, adding up over 40 years, and then you get a replacement rate of 75%. And there was an intention of all pension funds to increase these entitlements every year by the wage inflation or the price inflation. But since the euro crisis in 2010, most pension funds failed in this. And for instance, in my civil servants pension fund, I have got no indexation of my pension from 2010 on. Only in very recent years it has been increased a bit. So we lost a lot of purchasing power in our pension. And this gives many complaints of in particular the elderly in the Netherlands. So there was a major issue on how to go on. Some people say, well, just relax the rules, relax the funding rules, and then it's all doing well. But in the end, it was decided we really have to change the system and go to the DC system next. And in our new DC system, it's still collective, so it's mandatory. We don't change the idea of labor agreements. Everybody has to participate if it is decided in your sector, but we drop the ideas of a pension guarantees. And then it becomes clear that your pension becomes dependent on the investment returns. That gives some discussion because we have to convince people that there is no longer a guaranteed income, but every year it can go up or down depending on the investment returns. We aim at a sort of life cycle investment by giving more risks in the early phases of the life cycle. So we're giving more risks to the young and less risks to the elderly. So in this way, the pensioners are still shielded from too much of risk. The pension is mandatory. So you build up a pension until the pension age, which is linked to life expectancy in the Netherlands, also in the first pillar. So we linked it in a 2 to 3 manner automatically. And from your retirement age, you are obliged to put it in a lifelong pension. So no very little flexibility here, no drawdown accounts, really, and insurance for your life. So this is very good individual longevity insurance. To maintain the ambition also in the accumulation phase, the payout phase, people should accept that there should be a risk as well. So all pension funds are nowadays convinced that also in the pension phase you should take risk. But it's up to social partners in the specific schemes. There are also schemes aiming at fixed nominal pensions. But most in the larger pension funds all decided to go on investing after retirement. Next. We have designed 2 new pension contracts for our new pension system. This is next. There are also some classical DC contracts with insurance companies, but for pension funds and major company pension agreements, we have designed 2 new contracts. There is a solidarity contract and there is a flexible contract. So each pension funds have now to choose between either of these contracts. For the accumulation phase, it still remains the same as in the old system. There is a mandatory contribution, some 25% from the age of 18 years. Everybody has to contribute. There is no flexibility. And it's also independent of your age. So it's flat contribution rate for all ages. In the payout phase, also the idea of a mandatory lifelong annuity is kept in the new system. New is the option to take out 10% of your pension capital at retirement age. That is still in legislation because of all kinds of details, but the idea is that people can take up 10% of the pension capital. And there is also some possibility to front loading in your payout phase, having a bit higher pension at the beginning and a lower pension later on. So this is common to the both contracts. Now going to the solidarity contract. Next. Yes. Here it is the idea, and this is basically for the bigger pension funds. Most of them choose this contract. So there's very little individual choice. There is collective investment, and there are risk-sharing rules. So the risk-sharing rules actually mimic the life cycle, giving more risk to the younger and less risk to the older participants, and also here risk after retirement. And in addition, there's the opportunity to put some 10% of your pension wealth in a solidarity reserve. Actually, all funds are now discussing how this should be filled in, but the idea is that you can smooth shocks more over generations. So most pension funds nowadays choose to fund this from excess returns or from contributions, and to use it to supplement pensions in bad years, so to more stabilize the pensions for the elderly. The flexible contract next allows for more individual choice. Each individual participant gets its own account. Here they can choose explicit life cycles, and there's also some choice. They can choose the risk profile, and they can choose also, for instance, to have more ESG investment or not in the portfolio. So this allows for somewhat more flexibility in individual choice. And also here there is some possibility to share risks over generations by an additional reserve. It is a maximum of 10% because otherwise you might come in a situation where you roll on deficits to the future. So here it's for sure it's only a very limited amount of risk sharing. Okay. Next, so we are in the transition. It should be done before 2028. And the first pension funds are in the transition right now, but most of them decided to do it later on. It takes some time because people have to agree, social partners have to agree on a new contract. And it has to be evaluated by the supervisor, by the Netherlands Bank, and by the authorities of financial markets. So it takes some time. And the big issue, and that's quite unique in the world, that we decided that also existing pension entitlements should be moved to the new system. So most countries who have had similar transition chose to start with new accrual only, but here also all pension entitlements should move to the new system, and this requires that it all should be valued. So we have thought a lot of how to have a proper valuation of all existing entitlements, but in the end we have decided a sort of standard rule how this is done. And this gives the translation of current entitlements in everybody's individual account. But then even there were some redistributive elements in the old DB system, so there's still a problem that some ages are worse off, some ages are better off. In particular, people in the mid-working ages tend to be worse off if you do just in the standard way. So we need some compensation as well. Luckily, funding ratios have recovered recently, so this gives some extra funds for compensation. And also what is important is that going from DB to DC, the reserve requirements for pension funds are lowered. So on average, pension funds were required to have some 20% or 25% of solidarity solvency buffer, and that's going down now to some 5%. So there is an excess of reserves in pension funds, which is also used to smooth any problems in the transition. And so far, the news is from people who are in the transition that people are very happy because their pension goes up because these reserves are distributed over current generation. My personal worry is that what is not mentioned is that this, of course, is at the cost of future generations. In the end, it's a zero sum. But you could argue future generation get a better and more robust pension system, so they will benefit from this. But this helps a lot in compensating certain groups and also to make it attractive for all people. But there is a strong, strict test of that it should be fair. It was decided in the legislation that it should be fair of all generations, and particularly labor unions are very strict on this, and they require that nobody should be worse off in going to the new system. Of course, it's an issue how you measure this in wealth or in income or expected income or in welfare. But we mostly do look at market value of pensions. And each pension scheme has to draw up its own transition plan that has to be approved. And once it is approved, they can go ahead. But it takes a long time. And one of the issues is also that when you make a transition plan, you do it for over, and the actual transition is only 3 years later, then circumstances can change over these times. So that might still be an issue today. It's difficult. So the original intentions were that most pension funds would go to the new system around 2026. But in general, there's a tendency to postpone this, and more pension funds are waiting till the end of the period. But these are exciting times. Next slide. Now looking ahead, because so far for the good news, but there are some challenges to our system. And the main challenge, which is not addressed by this pension reform, is that not everybody is in this good pension system. Of course, the first pillar is for all, but the second pillar, there are many people which do not build up any occupational pension. Also, employees. There are more and more sectors and companies who have no pension agreement. Also, there are more and more sectors which have no labor agreement. So, some 12% of all employees are not covered, are not building up any occupational pension. This is called the white spot, and that is quite robust. It's still increasing, and there is also a larger group, but we are not certain how big this group is, which has a pension but only a very low pension. And particularly in new sectors, people sometimes get offered a pension, but with much lower replacement rates than the ideal of some 75% of previous income. And this is also a growing group. We see that in particular in new sectors, there is less enthusiasm for occupational pension. And then on top of this, we have also the self-employed. They have also no occupational pensions. They have to take care of themselves. And of course, because of all other well-known behavioral issues, they often do not build up sufficient income. And for the social partners, it's also an important point that as a self-employed do not have to pay for this high pension contribution rates. So if you are an employee with a pension arrangement, then you have some 25% contribution rate. But self-employed do not have this mandatory contribution rate, and they can offer the services easier and more at lower prices. So it is felt that there is no level playing field, And this is a major concern for labor unions and social partners, and also a reason to look at this problem. Next. There has been a nice recent research done at several institutions, at NetSpar, but also at the central bank. But if you look at the minority of employees who do not build the number of employees self-employed who do not have an occupational pension, you should expect that they build up more pensions in the second pillar, but that's hardly done. So from the employees, only 2% has some extra savings in the third pillar, and from the self-employed, it's a bit more, it's 8%, but it still means that over 90% has no compensation at all in private savings, so they will end up with very low pensions in the end. And for the self-employed, we see in particular people with low income, it's still very low figures. Only 7% is for the high income. It's 12% because it's for fiscal reasons. It's attractive to save in the third pillar, but you have to have spare money that you can spend on this. So this is, I guess, this is still a major challenge for the future, not covered in this reform, but I think this will be an issue in the years to come. Next slide, please. Yes. I think this problem is not going away by itself. The background is changing labor markets. You see in the Netherlands, but also in other countries, that more and more people choose for self-employment. With modern platforms, modern technologies, it's easier to organize your work yourself. We have a lot more and more solo self-employed, so people without personnel, and there is also a steady group of entrepreneurs with self-employed with personnel. This is a very heterogeneous group, as it is in other countries as well. So there are the entrepreneurs, they do very well and they take care of their retirement income most of the time themselves. There is also a group of older workers who leave their job and choose for self-employment voluntarily as an easier exit rule. They can bring down their working hours. But there is also, in particular in crisis times, a growing group of forced self-employment. They lose their job and the only thing they can do is to offer the services as self-employed. But this is clearly the weaker group in self-employment. In the next slide, we see, and this is actually quite a danger for the Dutch system. We see as the coverage of labor agreements going down. So, and more sectors do not have a labor agreement. And this is in particular in the new industries. So you see in the ICT, the media, the financial services, that often there are individual arrangements between employers and employees, but no longer a collective agreement with social partners. And this is going down quite rapidly. And so the coverage of these labor agreements is also going down. Also, the participation in labor unions is going down in the Netherlands. And this might be a problem because our system, this is essential to our system. We have a corporate system with a large group of social partners, and I see not easy ways to change this because there's really less enthusiasm by entrepreneurs and also by employees of having a pension agreement. Most people think that this should be done by people themselves or by the state. So this is an issue for the future. Next. We should think about solutions, but this is the really discussion starting now. It took us 15 years to think of the current pension reform, I think it will take some time to find solutions for this as well. But it's interesting that there is now an evaluation of a government commitment. So the government committed in now in the new pension legislation, pension law, to halving the white spot. The white spot was all employees without any occupational pension. So it should be brought down from 12% to 6% in 10 years' time from 2019 on. Next year there will be a halfway evaluation, and it is expected that we are not on track. There was a plan of attack by the labor, by the social partners, drawn in 2020, which envisages mainly better monitoring of the compliance. So it was felt that we should be more strict on the compliance of the obligation. But there are a lot of issues with sector definitions. We had an interesting case with Booking.com. They said, well, we are an IT company, so we are not obliged to have a pension for our employees. But according to social partners, it is a travel agent. In the end, it was decided, it was taken to court, and it was decided that it is a travel agent, so they are covered by the occupational rules as well. So this is interesting, but all these sector borders are quite blurred, and it's difficult to keep them. We have introduced shorter waiting periods for flex workers, so that helps a bit. And it was the idea that with better information, we might be able to convince people that they should have an occupational pension. This plan is going to be evaluated next year. And as I said, it's expected that it is not on track. So that raises discussion how to proceed. But this is only for the employee part. For the self-employed, there has been little work done. Until recently, there has been a major committee in the government. And first, it was hoped that with the pension reform, more self-employed could arrange pensions with the pension funds. There was also some opportunity given to pension funds to experiment with this, but there has been no success. So this is nothing, no success at all. We have increased the tax treatment more favorable for individual pension savings. That helps for some, but you could doubt whether it's not mainly a tax arbitrage. And the interesting report is just written last year. And they are thinking of should we go to a pension obligation for all people, all workers in the Netherlands? And they suggest two models. One with a standard national pension scheme, and one with just an obligation, a free choice of provider. There also has been some discussion on a notional DC system like in Sweden, but it is thought to be too disruptive for the Dutch pension system. So that's put outside of consideration. So on the next, we are thinking now of should we go to a pension obligation for all? There are big issues. There are many issues. It is basically the idea is that we should keep up the current system. So it's only complementary to the existing collective labor agreements. It's only aiming at those with insufficient pensions. So the white spot and the self-employed. There are still a lot of issues to be debated. What's the ambition level? Should it be also the 75%, or should it be lower, as in most countries? How should we deal with the self-employed? Maybe 75 ambition is a bit too much for them. Should we have separate arrangements for the self-employed? You could also think of lighter regimes for self-employed with auto-enrollment, like in the UK, which is also quite successful. Next. And there has also been initiatives. I have to move on. I'm going to conclude. I see Francisco coming on now. There have also been initiatives to improve access of the third pillar. Actually, this week there has been a report that at least we should aim at including the third pillar is our pension overview, which is quite difficult because insurance companies are not really up to this. Can I go to my last slide? Conclusion, I'll do it briefly. So we are in a major transform. That should be make our pension system more robust, but we have important challenges ahead to do it very quickly. So this concludes my presentation, and I'm open for questions. Thanks a lot for the attention.
Thank you very much for this very clear and presentation. So we already have 3 questions from the audience, so that's good news. So let me give priority to the attendees' questions. So the first question is, does moving from a defined benefit to a defined contribution represent a failure on the actuarial work?
So sorry again?
Yeah, so the first question is the fact that we are moving from a defined benefit to a defined contribution system. Does this represent a failure on the actuarial work, on the actuaries?
No, it's a systematic problem. So it is really in legislation. It was a DB system. Well, actually, pension funds could choose between DC and DC, but most of them actually introduced DB. And we had a very strict supervisory framework on this DB system. And in the end, with the aging problem, it is no longer sustainable.
Yeah, I can understand. Yeah, and let me add to this question: how this is perceived by the population, the people in general? Are there resistance from the unions, or is it going smooth?
As I said, it took us 15 years to convince everybody, also all pension fund governors. The first idea was, well, it was triggered, of course, by pension, by the euro crisis and already by the internet bubble crisis from 2000 on. Then interest rates were declining, and because the entitlements are valued by the interest rate, this increased the value of the entitlements and it pushed down our funding ratios. At first, we had a long discussion what interest rate to use. Economists, we say, of course, you should use market interest rates, but there are many countries who do not use market interest rates, but just arbitrary interest rates. So the first discussion was on should we use market interest rates or not? And still, people for a long time thought, well, if you just switch the system towards chosen interest rates, fixed higher interest rates, then we have no problem at all. Also, the elderly parties, we have got an elderly party in Parliament even on this, but there are also strong elderly groups also within labor unions who had strong opposition against this. They felt, well, it's all the fault of the strong regulation, and if we just change it and not make it more relaxed, then our problem is simply solved, and we can keep this system. This took us a long time, and still people are suspicious about the new system, and in particular in labor unions, they had difficulty in the idea that you have to get risk in your pension. So there was already a pension agreement around 2010, but then labor unions, or particular sections in the labor unions, they came up with the arguments, we don't want a casino pension. we don't know what we don't want any risk in our pension.
Yeah.
We want to have guarantees and preferably guarantees linked to wage inflation. But we think this is no longer sustainable. But still, this is still, I think, an issue for the future. Are people going to accept that there is more risk in the pension? People are not used that pensions are being lowered. In the old system, it was only lowered in very exceptional circumstances, and then it was big news. So it is really felt as a breach of the pension contract. Now people should get used to it. It sometimes goes up and sometimes go down. And I think in the end, if the proof of the pudding is in the eating, it depends a lot on what is going to happen next year. We hope that returns will go up. But the first signals from pension funds who are in a transition is what helps a lot is what I told that we can bring down our reserves. The solvency reserves requirements are much easier under DC. And we see that almost all pension funds can now increase their pensions in the transition. So if you, and that helps a lot to convince people. People are surprised now, both people who got their first statement on previous pension in the new system against the previous, the pension prediction in the old system. We get a nice overview from this. And in most cases, it goes up by some 5 or 10%. And having missed indexation for some 15 years is really unique. So I think so far the news is good and people are going to accept it. But we will see in the coming years what will happen if there are bad investment years, and if people are that happy as well.
Yeah, this connects with another question we have from the audience that say that what happens if there is a widespread loss in the markets that results in a general loss of savings? No, what is this?
We have, of course, this life cycle idea. So for the elderly, they are shielded. They have only limited exposures in financial markets. We have also covered most interest rate risks in current pension funds. So, but even then, they may go down, and we hope that at younger ages you see that your account goes up and down. So in the new system, you see the amount of capital in your account. In the old system, you didn't see it; you only saw expected retirement income. But in the new system, you're going to see expected retirement income and your current account. We hope that younger generations think, well, it's the current prices now, but will go up before I'll retire. But what you see now in the design of this solidarity reserve is mentioned pension funds aim to build it a sort of guarantee there as well. So they are going to use this solidarity reserve to avoid nominal losses for the elderly. This is not the intention of how it was designed, but it's how it is done in practice. So this helps. But yeah, this will be exciting in the next 10 years in the Netherlands.
Great. Another question that we have is they ask if we are moving from a solidarity-based system to one based on individual contributions in supplementary pensions. So is the solidarity-based system going to disappear? But you just
it depends a bit on what you mean by solidarity. There were some redistributive element in the old system. There is still some solidarity in current pension schemes, in particular for disability. If you become disabled, then some pension funds, most take over contributions from people. But mainly the new system is actuarially fair, so little solidarity. If there is, my point of view is if there is any solidarity, it's going the wrong way because it's solidarity of the people with shorter life expectancy with people with long life expectancy. So in my civil servant pension funds, there is solidarity from the low income with lower life expectancy with the professors with high life expectancy.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And one question from, I think perhaps you, detail from your slides that I missed. So you mentioned that the first pillar, we need individuals to reside in the Netherlands for 50 years, but does it reside and work? So unemployed people or people who don't work?
No, just where you live.
Just live,
Yeah,
no,
you are registered to live.
okay. And then you get the first pillar is secured.
Yeah, then you get every year you get X%, so adding up every year you get 2% adding up to 100% in 50 years.
Okay. And then another question that I have is that you mentioned at some point that the second pillar is based on the life expectancy. You mentioned
Yeah.
the retire. So just I'm curious, does it depend on the life expectancy at birth? Does it depend on the remaining life expectancy at age 65? Because I know there's been some debate trying to set the retiring age when at the age at which the remaining life expectancy is about 13 or 14 years. So how is this calculated?
Oh, that's a good question. I know. I'm not for sure. I guess it is at the age of 60, at retirement age. So the
Okay.
remaining life expectancy, but otherwise I'll check it. I'll look it up for you.
Okay, no, I'm just curious about
Yeah, we have changed the system a bit in the past. The first in 2010, it was agreed to link it to life expectancy, and then we linked it in one-for-one manner. So one more life expectancy, 1 year more, also 1 year increase in retirement age. So then you fix the spell of retirement. That was felt too strict, so that has been changed in a 2 to 3 manner. So what most countries have.
Okay. And let me ask you just one last question. So in your view, how does a private or occupational pension pillar interact with the public pillar? And how do you feel that the balance will evolve in the next years, and in what direction?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we have a very clear-cut division between the first and the second pillar. So the first pillar, I think we are very happy with this. We have the solid basic pension for all, and that at least avoids poverty and guarantees some income. Our second pillar is on top of this. I think there can be an issue also linked to the increase in risk in your occupational pensions. One alternative could be to have also a contributory part in the first pillar. So this is the idea of having a notional DC system in the Netherlands. So if in the end it turns out that people do not want all the investment risk in the second pillar, you could think of a system where you have a smaller second pillar, a smaller funded pillar, and part of it going to the first sector. But that's seen as a major reform. But I think also depending on how what the experience will be with our second pillar, and there is more risk in pensions. That is interesting to at least explore now. So Nesper also did a research project for this on request of our previous Minister of Social Affairs to look at this, whether it could be maybe a way to go in a more distant future in the Netherlands.
Okay, thanks so much. I think there are no more questions. So, Professor, thank you so much for your time. It was very clear, all the ideas, everything. And we are very thankful for your time and for being part of this European seminar.
Okay, and thanks for organizing this seminar. It's very insightful to hear all the experiences in all the countries. So it's a very good initiative. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. Thank you.